What if I told you that Space LACES was famous on the internet before the Space LACES project ever existed? Years before gaining prominence as one of the world's leading dubstep producers, he was building a fanbase on Newgrounds under his first alias called cornandbeans, which still has a fanbase and internet relevance to this day. But the thing is, most OG cornandbeans fans have no idea about Space LACES, and most Space LACES fans who know about cornandbeans weren't actually around to witness its heyday. If cornandbeans hadn't gained a loyal following on Newgrounds, then we probably would never have been graced with the existence of Space LACES, who is one of dubstep's most cherished icons. Now, if we want to understand how he first found success with cornandbeans and later turned Space LACES into something exponentially bigger, then we need to take a trip back in time to where it all began. Ian Slider is the man behind these projects, and he was born in Louisville, Kentucky in March of 1991, which is where he has lived his entire life, even to this day.
That's all Monday night on the new Louisville Tonight Show, right here on WHAS TV.
He grew up in a religious household, and believe it or not, he actually went to church with Jennifer Lawrence as a kid and was even in the same Sunday school class as her. Now, regarding music, his production journey began in October of 2004 when he was 13 years old. However, he wouldn't release anything until 2 years later while he was attending a Catholic high school in Louisville from 2005 to 2009.
And it's where the boy you are finally discovers the man you always wanted to be.
In the summer of 2006, just before his sophomore year, he debuted his first ever artist project called Cornandbeans. The first ever Cornandbeans track was titled Mystic Legends Boss Theme, and it was released on June 20th, 2006. He uploaded a total of 25 tracks in his first 30 days on Newgrounds, often uploading multiple in a single day. By the end of the year, he had uploaded 91 tracks, ranging from things like Harry Potter techno to Pokemon drum and bass, and a bunch of originals. Not every track that he uploaded was finished, and he basically treated Newgrounds like a Dropbox folder of whips for those first 6 months, as he would sometimes upload revised versions of older tracks. But in the following years, he seemed to tighten up his release strategy as his output dropped off significantly, but most tracks that he posted after 2006 were finished, with a handful of demos thrown in. He also released a few collabs with one of his friends from Louisville who also had a bit of traction on Newgrounds under the alias DeGramcracka. Together, they produced tracks like I Love Cock and I Love Cock 2, as well as the Cock Trance Chronicles, which Ian personally described as 9 minutes of non-stop cock jams.
Gabber, 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 gabber. Gabber, gabber, gabber.
Gabber, please.
During the rest of his time in high school, he gained quite the loyal following on Newgrounds, and he was even finding some commercial success, at least within the context of late 2000s internet culture. Many of his tracks were used in the popular internet game called Flash Flash Revolution, which was the computer spin-off of the famous arcade-style video game Dance Dance Revolution. Additionally, he produced the main menu theme song for a game called Castle Crashers. Cornandbeans had such an impact on the internet that tons of random people still upload Cornandbeans tracks to YouTube multiple times a month to this day. There was even a post on the Unpopular Opinion subreddit 5 years ago saying that Cornandbeans is better than Skrillex, and this was after Cornandbeans had already been inactive for a decade. My point is that Ian made such a big impact with his first project that it still resonates with many fans long after the project ended, and that's extremely rare for anyone to pull off, let alone a high schooler. Now up to this point, you've probably only ever known Ian Slider to be an electronic music producer, but he actually has experience producing for rappers as well. Just a few weeks before his 18th birthday, during his final semester of high school, he and two friends competed in their school's Battle of the Bands as a rap trio called the Humblebees. For the performance, Ian was on the decks while they performed a 55-minute set of all original tracks produced by Ian himself, with names like Gold Krispies, Christmas Time, and Dora the Explorer.
I think that you know. I want to go Krispies, them hot Cheetos. Shove them in my mouth. Can't forget it. The cheesy go Krispies is as hot as all mine.
They came in second place, and they were beat out by a 5-member cover band called Purple Back Pocket.
Well, we're Purple Back Pocket, and it's our job to rock your socks off.
The Humblebees not taking home the gold seemed to bother Ian so deeply that he had no choice but to become one of the most respected dubstep artists in the world out of spite. Now, all jokes aside, as graduation was quickly approaching, there seemed to be some urgency from Ian to turn his musical success into a career. I found a comment he made on Newgrounds around this time, basically begging people to check out his music, which to me seems like it may have been triggered by the usual end of high school anxiety about what the heck you're gonna do with your life. He graduated in the spring of 2009, and it's unclear if he ever pursued any further education after high school. The following year in 2010, Ian decided it was time to retire Corn and Beans and create a new project with the goal of breaking into the electronic music industry, which was experiencing massive growth around that time. Corn and Beans had basically served as his testing grounds to hone his craft while getting feedback about what does and doesn't work along the way. Corn and Beans was all about learning and improving, but this next project was going to be about execution and mastery. In August of 2010, Ian unveiled this new project with its first track, Control-C, Control-V. Space Laces had officially arrived. At some point later on, he removed this track from his Soundcloud and never released it again. However, part of an updated version does make an appearance in his Voltage 2 mix, which he released in 2019. He soon after got his first label release with the track Deep Space, which sampled a clip of the famous astronomer and scientist Carl Sagan, specifically from his final appearance on The Charlie Rose Show in 1996.
If we are not able to ask skeptical questions, to interrogate those who tell us that something is true, to be skeptical of those in authority, then we're up for grabs for the next charlatan, political or religious, who comes ambling along.
This track garnered support from Porter Robinson, who was making a name for himself, but still a year away from the release of his breakout EP, Spitfire. From 2010 to 2012, Space Laces was basically an electro house project, which makes sense because Corn and Beans was mostly 4 on the floor. Plus, that was kinda just the popular sound at the time, even though it was often wrongly labeled as dubstep. For example, Skrillex's Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites EP actually has more house tracks than dubstep, but at the time a lot of people used dubstep as a blanket term, even if it was technically incorrect. Anyway, through these first 3 years, Space Laces released a few electro house remixes like Figures Torture, Lucky Dates Hoes and Discos, and New World Order by Croy Club.
New World Order.
Now, as he was getting his footing in his 3rd year of Space Laces, he actually started a side project that same year called Shelter. This is one that I rarely see mentioned in any discourse around Space Laces because a fair amount of people seem to know about Corn and Beans, but not Shelter. Which is a shame because it's absolutely beautiful and it shows a totally different side of Ian's skills as a producer and as a songwriter. Shelter was active from 2012 to 2013, though he revealed on Discord that he has a full album's worth of unreleased Shelter tracks. Who knows if we'll ever hear them or not, but the fact that it took him 11 years to officially release Disco Bloodbath at least shows that there's definitely a chance. Now, bringing things back to the main Space Laces project, in 2012, his production prowess had caught the attention of Excision, who then asked him to remix his track X-Rated. The remix was released on Mousetrap that same year, and to my knowledge, this was the first ever dubstep track that Space Laces officially released. Space Laces did such a good job with the remix that Excision brought him another opportunity by asking him to be a major collaborator on the debut Destroyed album. For those who don't know, Destroyed was essentially a live dubstep band consisting of Excision, Downlink, and KJ Saka. I go deeper into their history in my Supergroups video, so feel free to check that out if you want to know more. Anyway, the album was dropped in 2013, with Space Laces having a heavy hand in its production on 5 of the 10 total tracks. He released another single with Destroyed that same year called Get Stupid, and he also dropped a collab with Bro Safari called Fang Banger, which was actually the first Space Laces track that I ever heard. He also dropped one last Corn and Beans track in 2013 after being inactive for 3 years, except this track was one that he made in 2008 called Gemini, and this might be my favorite Corn and Beans track. At the end of the year, his hard drive corrupted, and he said that he lost an obscene amount of work. He tried to salvage the situation by sending the hard drive to a lab for possible repair, but unfortunately they weren't able to do anything. However, he was able to recover some files from personal backups, but not everything. Losing so much of his work created a long-lasting ripple effect as his musical output dropped significantly for the following 3 to 4 years. However, he was able to keep the brand alive and he continued to push forward. In the face of this setback, he was still able to release 2 tracks in 2014. Dungeons & Dragons and the long-awaited fan-requested Digital Gangsta, which had been in the works for many years. He started getting more opportunities to play shows as he went on tour with Figure later in the year, and he also got to play a festival in Maryland called Nightmare Festival. Moving into 2015, he continued to get show bookings, but none of it was very high level. I think at this point it was safe to say that he was a brutally underrated artist because the respect his project had been getting from fans and industry peers was on a completely different level compared to the caliber of bookings that he actually received, and that never really made sense to me. Still to this day, I consider Space Laces to be underrated and underappreciated for how much of a trendsetter he is in bass music, though thankfully I think it is to a lesser degree now than how things were in 2015. But anyway, he only released one original track in 2015 called Say It Ain't So, which he released as a free download after hitting 50k SoundCloud followers. He was also featured on the Excision track called Push It Up, and 1 month after that song released, he created the Wizard of Balls SoundCloud account where he shared clips of unfinished tracks. The name Wizard of Balls is derived from an obscure YouTube video that was posted in 2012, which Ian shared on his Space Laces Facebook page 2 years before creating the Wizard of Balls account.
I am the Wizard of Balls. I cast many spells to shrink balls. I have large balls, so this is an issue of grave concern. I am the Wizard of Balls. I am the Wizard of Balls.
I believe that a lot of people think that he was the one who created this audio, but as far as I can tell, I don't think he was. I think he probably just came across this video and latched onto it, as he would sometimes play it in his sets starting around 2014.
I am the Wizard of Balls. I cast many spells to shrink balls. I have large balls, so this is an issue of grave concern.
And that would be pretty on brand for him, because finding obscure YouTube videos to sample is kind of his thing. Like for example, his 2011 Hoes and Discos remix samples a tutorial on how to grow bean sprouts.
I am the sprout master. I've grown an awful lot of sprouts.
Now let's move on to 2016, which marked the beginning of the Space Laces project turning a new corner. First off, in August of that year, he took to social media to let fans know that he was making lots of new music and feeling productive for the first time in 2 years. Though ironically, he only released one single that year and was only featured on one other track. But the thing is, these were two of the biggest dubstep tracks of the year, and I believe they marked a new standard of quality for Space Laces, which is really saying something. His original track, Bug Bass, dropped on the highly esteemed Never Say Die Black label, which was entering into its peak years. In typical Space Laces fashion, this track took him 3 years to make, as the original Bug Bass demo surfaced in 2013 and can still be heard on his Wizard of Balls account. As for the other track, he was featured on a collab with Excision that appeared on his Virus album, with the track being called Throwin' Elbows. If you were attending any dubstep shows around this time, you probably heard this track before it got released because it was getting rinsed by anyone who could get their hands on it, which ended up generating a ton of hype for its release. With the success of Bug Bass and Throwin' Elbows, Space Lace's brand had been elevated moving into 2017. This translated to some higher profile bookings, like playing the first ever Lost Lands and supporting Snails at the Tacoma Dome. And just like the year prior, he only released 2 tracks in 2017 as well, but they were both huge, which had kinda just become the norm for Space Laces. You can never really expect him to release much, but on the rare occasion that he does, it's going to be a big deal. So the first of these 2 tracks was a collab with Snails called Break It Down, which was released on Ausla. This was another track that was floating around for a while before its release, except the demo that was going around didn't have the vocals from Sam King. As for his second track of 2017, it was a release on Never Say Die called Cruise Control, which was released at the end of the year. Never Say Die had become the perfect match for Space Laces, and from the release of Cruise Control in late 2017 up until the dissolution of the label in 2022, it would serve as the exclusive home for Space Laces music, except for a few collabs with Excision. And the timing couldn't have been more perfect because Space Laces really turned on the jets in 2018, dropping his first ever EP 8 years into the project. This was arguably the hottest bass release of the year, and not only that, but it has really stood the test of time over the last 8 years. Dropping a full body of work put the Space Laces project into a new light, and the industry recognition soon followed. It caused a huge uptick in bookings, which allowed him to properly showcase his music in a live setting. This marked a new era for Space Laces, as the presence of his brand was the strongest it had ever been by a long shot, partly due to the fact that he released 8 tracks that year. The other 3 tracks that weren't on the Overdrive EP included a collab with Topi called Whiplash and 2 collabs on Excision's Apex album, One on One and Rumble. Regardless of the major milestones he achieved in 2018, he had one last trick up his sleeve to cement the year in dubstep history. Nearing the final month of 2018, he dropped his first ever Vaultage audio-visual mix featuring 14.5 minutes of rare coveted Space Laces IDs, complete with high-octane visuals. The whole concept of Voltage was a genius idea because it allowed him to showcase many of his unfinished tracks in a way that feels fluid within the greater context of a mix without actually having to finish the full tracks. As expected, it made a huge impact, and many artists began to copy this format, which is something that Space Laces is all too familiar with. I mean, just check out this sticker that he sells on his website. It says, "Career slowing down? Consider ripping off Space Laces." The sharp uptick in momentum from 2018 carried over into the new year, with Space Laces getting more bookings than ever. He added fuel to the fire with new singles Phone Tap and Daw, and somehow released another Voltage mix less than a year after the first one. On the live front, things were rolling full steam ahead, including a tour with Zomboy, joint tour with Must Die, and a solo headline tour through Australia. He even went back-to-back with bass music legend Moody Good for the 10th anniversary of Never Say Die. Unfortunately, COVID couldn't have come at a worse time, robbing Space Laces of all the momentum fueling his rapidly growing success. The project essentially came to a halt for all of 2020, at least in regard to new music. To fill the downtime, Ian turned to Discord to connect with fans by playing Super Smash Bros. Ultimate with them, as well as giving valuable feedback to producers. By March of 2021, he was back with the third rendition of Voltage. Weeks later, he dropped one of the most powerful singles of all time, Dominate. In April, he dropped his final track of the year, a collab with Trampa called Shank. This was followed up with his biggest live show opportunities ever, including his Red Rocks debut when he opened for Sudden Death, plus a huge performance at Lost Lands. But all of this would pale in comparison to what he had in store in the coming months. In February of 2022, Space Laces took over Mission Ballroom in Denver for back-to-back nights of the first ever Voltage live set. These sets were followed by the release of the first ever High Voltage EP, featuring 5 previously unreleased tracks which Ian handpicked from the vault. The most notable of these tracks is Disco Bloodbath, which had been in the works since 2011. You can hear the old version of this track in a 2013 guest mix he did for Going Quantum, and you can definitely tell the progress that was made over the 11 years that he spent working on it.
Fucking unbelievable.
The following year in 2023, Space Laces released 3 new tracks as well as a remix. This included Survive, Dominate VIP, In the Place, and a rare remix of Odd Mob's Left to Right. Space Laces was a part of the formation of 2 supergroups that year as well. The first being Master Hand, which includes Sudden Death and Eptic, with the name being a nod to Super Smash Bros., which Ian is a big fan of as we learned during COVID, and Sudden Death's name is literally straight from the game.
Sudden Death, go!
The trio made their debut at Sudden Death's Summoning of the Eclipse Festival, but they haven't released any new music yet. However, the second supergroup that we're about to talk about has released music. It's called Hive Mind, which consists of Space Laces, Keizo, and Must Die, and they dropped 2 different tracks last year which were both hard dance, and they sound very similar to Space Laces' Dominate VIP. Oh, and he also made longtime Space Laces fan Ray Seahorn from Better Call Saul very happy when she ran into him at the airport and begged for a picture with her favorite dubstep DJ guy, a moment that she will cherish forever.
You don't think anyone's gonna actually buy this?
Hard to say.
Moving into 2024, fans got 2 new tracks in the forms of collabs with industry giant Marshmello, Conquer and Rave Repeater. On top of all of that, he played EDC Las Vegas for his 3rd year in a row, had a headline tour, and did the first ever Vaultage back-to-back Deadroom set, and for those who don't know, Deadroom is Sudden Death's house alias. He capped off the year by making the sacred pilgrimage to America's Mecca, known as Big Lots. A transformative experience reserved only for the select few who are worthy of its deep discounts in this post-bankruptcy era. He rode that Big Lots high all the way into 2025, where he reached multiple career peaks. His first single of the year was a collab with Eptic called Crash Out, and this was followed by his next solo release, This Way. Fans also finally got to hear the long-awaited Space Laces and Skrillex collab, or at least a little over a minute of it, when it appeared on Skrillex's 2025 album, Fuck You Skrillex, You Think You're Andy Warhol, But You're Not.
Space Laces, coming at you from the windshield. My new collab is out with Skrillex today, and I hope you go stream it, you enjoy. It's been 6 years in the making, and you get 1 minute and 10 seconds.
His final collab of the year came with longtime EDM heavyweight DJ Snake for the track Reloaded, which he got to showcase in front of 80,000 fans in Paris. However, he saved the best for last when he took over Mission Ballroom at the end of the year for his 2nd ever Vaultage live show. The show debuted the 4th installment of his Vaultage series a week before its release, and he set out to make this the ultimate flagship Space Laces experience. In order to do so, he had to go into the red, meaning that it cost him more to produce this show than what he actually made back in ticket sales, so he literally went into this knowing that he would be losing money just to give this new era of Vaultage the show that it deserved. One week later, Vaultage 4 hit streaming platforms and received immense praise.
And now, our feature presentation.
As a longtime fan of Space Laces, I'm glad that he's finally moving into an era of the project where he doesn't feel as undeservingly underrated, and I think that gap will continue to close over time. Because if you really zoom out and look at the full journey, from messing around with producing in 2004 to the Newgrounds days as Corn and Beans, all the way to modern day Space Laces, it seems pretty obvious that not only has he always been ahead of his time, but he consistently sets the bar and moves it forward with each release, and other producers just try to catch up. It doesn't always get acknowledged, but Space Laces leaves his fingerprints all over any genre he touches. And whether or not the world ever fully realizes how much Space Laces has shaped the evolution of bass music, his impact has already been made, and the influence is undeniable for those who can see it. Alright, if you made it this far, I've got a little bit of bonus content for you. I wanted to share this SoundCloud account that I strongly believe may be run by Space Laces, but since I couldn't definitively prove this to be true, I didn't want to put it in the main part of the video. It's called Balls, and it was reposted by the Space Laces ID account, which is how I originally came across it. It says they're from Kentucky, so that part checks out, and the name Balls seems pretty on brand given the Wizard of Balls account. There's only 3 tracks total, but they definitely sound like some old Space Laces demos, and just to be clear, these are from 12 years ago, so keep that in mind, but have a listen for yourself.
I said, look, bitch.
In my mind, there's like a 95+% chance this account is owned by Space Laces, but let me know what you think. Now, one last thing, Space Laces actually released a sample pack many years ago, and it's the only one that he ever released. Except, here's the thing, he was trolling when he put this out, and they're all comically bad samples that basically have no use whatsoever, at least without heavy alteration.
I was a little worried that I might be getting soft.
This pack still exists on the internet for free download, and it's not really that hard to find, so I figured I would let you all know about it in case you want to go grab it for fun.
I ought to do a background check on you, see what type of fella you are. You know what you are? You remind me of the Wizard of Balls, because you're your own self, your own Wizard of Balls. That's what you are. Look at you, with a pink shirt and everything else. Oh, you're killing me. You have no friends, that's why you're the Wizard of Balls.